Hello and welcome to Releasing Your Inner Dragon, where story creators talk about story creation. If you have any suggestions or comments, please email them to releasingyourinnerdragon@gmail.com. Your hosts are Maxwell Alexander Drake, who, in addition to teaching creative writing around the world, is an award-winning novelist and former lead fiction writer for Sony's EverQuest Next. He's also written for other game properties like Shadowrun, written comic books, stage plays, musicals, sold movie scripts, and is currently producing an animated TV show that he's written and directed titled Gods. And Marie Mullaney, author of Songwheel Chronicles and YouTuber of the fantasy world-building channel Just in Time Worlds. We hope you enjoy this episode. We should talk about Tolkien.
So before we started this, because we chat about like what we're going to talk about and how we're going to approach things and stuff like that, just kind of make sure we're not like shocking each other on the conversations. Marie had brought up how much she likes, and just say it. Talk about what you love about the item.
So I like the way that Tolkien uses the One Ring, because the One Ring represents a core part of his theme, which is the temptation of power and the slow corrupting influence of power, even on a good character like the hobbits.
100%. 100%. It is the thing that makes Lord of the Rings. It is literally the thematic element that binds everything together. The part that I hate about it is what power? It has no power. It does nothing. Like, it doesn't make you a king. It doesn't make you invincible. It makes you invisible. Okay. But so does Harry Potter's robe. Like that doesn't do anything. And so that's the thing that kills me about it. It's like everybody's fighting for this stupid ring because they will rule the world when they have it, but it literally doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't give them power. It doesn't give them mortality. It doesn't give them strength. It doesn't give them control over, whatever that, because that's one of the things. At least the control is kind of this hint at when the elf is actually given the history of it, that Sauron made the rings for all the leaders of the world, the rings, whatever, and I won't be able to quote it, but 7 for the dwarves and 9 for the men, or whatever, 3 for the elves, whatever it was. I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate comments down below. It's like, I can't believe you messed that up.
3 for the elves, 7 for the dwarves, 9 for the men. Yeah,
I did it right. Okay, so I got it right.
I think. Come on, I might be wrong too.
Bring on the hate. It's fine. There was at least the hint of, and then he created one that would control them.
Yeah.
But that's a Chekhov's gun. He says, hey, look, audience, I have a gun and I'm going to cock it. It's loaded and I'm going to put it right here on the table. And then we never mention the gun again. That ring never controls any of those other rings again. It never does anything. And I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, but the Nazguls, whatever. Like, it really isn't defined. It really isn't. I thought that was the weakest part of it. Now, I love Lord of the Rings. I am not dogging on Lord of the Rings. I read it about every 5 years. It's one of my favorite, kind of things. But the Ring of Power has no power. Like, I don't know why. Thematically, it works beautifully. Thematically,
I'll tell you why I think it has no power. I think it has no power because Tolkien, and I'm going to catch heat. I know I'm going to catch it. Tolkien's magic system is as soft as an uncooked egg. His magic system does what his plot wants it to do.
Yep.
So the One Ring on Sauron's finger, can clearly control the Nazgul, control the other rings, make Sauron the king of the world. The One Ring on the finger of a hobbit makes them invisible. Why?
And go mad and turn into some weird green toad-looking dude.
Because Tolkien said so.
Right. So
and that's an outgrowth of his magic system.
Right. In my magic class, I use Tolkien. So what I say is there's a chart in my magic class where I go from defined magic to ambiguous magic.
Yeah.
And then in the middle I have semi-defined. So Tolkien to me is ambiguous magic. Harry Potter is semi-defined magic.
Yes. And
something like Sanderson's Mistborn series is defined magic. And so what I say is, and I stole this from Sanderson. This is directly a quote directly from Sanderson that I use in my class. but Sanderson said an author's ability to use magic to overcome conflicts in the story is directly related to how defined it is. So in other words, the more defined the magic system is, the more you can actually use it for overcoming things in the story. And the less defined it is, the less you can actually use it. So with Lord of the Rings, since it's completely ambiguous, like we don't know how magic works in Lord of the Rings. So why couldn't at the very beginning of the story, Gandalf have just teleported to Frodo and said, "Hey, you got that ring thing that Bilbo had? Oh, you do? Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna teleport to Mount Doom, drop it into the volcano, teleport back to Frodo, and go, all right, you want to go out to dinner? Because that's handled." Why didn't that happen? I mean, could it not happen? Can it happen? Can it not? We don't know.
We don't know.
But here's the thing: when you do that, talk about a Deus Ex Machina, moment when you don't define magic, then it literally does become God in the machine. Like, who knows what's happening with this? So if you do not define your magic, you literally can't use it, which is why I think he was limited, since he never really wanted to. I mean, he freaking spent years developing a freaking language, but he didn't spend 10 minutes developing his magic system.
He built an entire world, a complete world with history going back thousands of years. His magic system is because I said so.
and that's what hurts that ring of power. You call it a ring of power, but you never explain why. You never give me reasons. That's the weakest part of the story, in my opinion, because thematically it works beautifully. Thematically, talking about how much power destroys, fantastic. Couldn't get a better thematic element than that. But from a practical standpoint of what it actually does for your plot and for your story, it's horrendous. And then you get into semi-defined, which is like Harry Potter, which is why Harry Potter can use magic in some ways, but still can't use it to overcome the ultimate.
You know what annoys me in Harry Potter? You know what drives me nuts? Is for 6 books, we've been disarming wizards with Expelliarmus. 6 freaking books. Book 7, you do that and suddenly the wand changes allegiance. What?
And that's a different topic of breaking your own rules.
Yeah.
Here's what bothers me about that. So as a young Drake, I was an all-state racquetball player.
Huh?
Do you know what racquetball rackets have? They got little armbands on them because sometimes the racket slips from your hand and you don't want it flying across the rink and hitting somebody. Like if I had a magic wand, I'd put a little wristband on it, like Expelliarmus. Oh, look, I still have it. Like that's the one thing. I know it's a joke, but it's like you just need a racket wristband on it, and then you wouldn't lose.
It's valid. It's absolutely valid. And there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, but Harry Potter's a hard magic system." I'm like, no, Harry Potter's not a hard magic system.
Yeah, it's semi-defined. She defines it enough to where we know. Okay, you gotta have a wand. You gotta say the word. You gotta say it right. It's Levioso, not Leviosa, whatever. I always butcher that.
But how do you develop new spells? Like and you clearly can develop new spells.
Right.
So if you can develop new spells, why does it work? Why do the new spells work? Is it a language that you speak? Is it, and in that case, can anybody just say the words and it works? Clearly not. So you have to invest it with the power of the wizard. Can you cast it without the wand? You can cast it silent. Like, there's a lot that's not that clear.
And that's why. So, like, look at the second book, Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah.
So we've established the Sorting Hat. We've established Fawkes. We've established the Sword of Gryffindor. He gets trapped with the basilisk and down in the Chamber of Secrets, and Fawkes does show up with the Sorting Hat and drops the Sword of Gryffindor on him. And he can use the sword in certain ways, but it still is Harry overcoming the basilisk. He's not using magic to overcome it. So like in Lord of the Rings, we can't use magic at all to overcome anything. Then it just feels like you've cheated.
Yeah.
In Harry Potter, we can use it in certain ways. But when you go into heavily defined, like in the Mistborn series, now magic has become a tool. And I think that's the reason why I gravitate toward my magic items being and my magic systems being this, because like, you know, in a story, if we start off with a kid on a farm and he gets a sword for the first time, and then he practices and practices and practices, and he has these little mini battles where he wins some, loses some, and you watch him grow in his sword fighting skill. At the end of it, when he gets into the sword battle with the big sword master evil guy, you don't go, really? He killed him with a sword? Well, that's just cheesy. That came out of nowhere. No, you're like, we watched him improve his skill in this item that we completely understand. It's a rod of metal with a sharpened edge. It cuts, it stabs, it, you know, and so and that's when you have defined magic. And that's why my magic systems and my magic items and everything like that become these tangible physical things that you can cleverly use to overcome certain things. So and even when they come out of nowhere, go ahead and say what you're saying, but I do have one example for that.
So I also gravitate. My magic systems are also hard. Like, I fully understand my magic system. I'm not sure my readers do, but that's okay. Like, they will get there eventually. But I know the rules that govern my magic.
And that comes through in the writing. Yeah. So even if I don't understand everything, I understand that the world understands everything. You set that up just like I set that up. And so it doesn't feel like this, you know, God in the machine out of nowhere kind of thing. And so that's important. And that's the difference between this little sliding scale of magic that we're talking about here. So
and it's okay not to have a fully defined magic system, but then understand the limits you're working under. Because if you then use magic to overcome a problem, the moment you do, it feels like Deus Ex Machina to your readers.
Yeah.
Or your players or whatever. It feels like you're cheating.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So the example I use is actually this latest story that I just wrote for the 20 novel project that I'm working on. They end up fighting these chaos monsters, and the story is all told, like I said, from this prince, but you don't know he's a prince. Even the audience doesn't know he's a prince until the very end of that story. So he's introduced as a ranger in training. He runs as a ranger in training. He's, you know, he just is a ranger in training until the end when somebody basically bows to him and is like, my prince, and then the audience is like, oh wow. So he's fighting this chaos monster, and he's never seen these. He didn't even know they existed. So they're very rare, and the way the empire set up, they have these military kind of forces on the outsides, on the outskirts of the empire, and they've kept them because. And I even have a conversation when after that fight's over, they're like, how do I not know that these things exist? And he's like, because no citizen would ever want to know of the nightmares that actually exist right on their doorstep. The Rangers, the Frontier Cavalry, the Frontier Infantry, we make sure that you city folk never have to deal with this crap. So I already, you know, that's all in there. But so they're fighting this chaos monster in this dark forest at night. And I don't explain this, you know, this is not, the world is magic and there's different things going on, but this is the very first magic item that the readers ever see. So he's in front of this nightmare horror with all these tentacles and, you know, 6 eyes and massive mouth and all this craziness that's going on. And then all of a sudden he's blinded because something explodes in front of him and it blinds him. He hears the chaos monster screaming his head off. By the time he regains his sight, the other 2 rangers have really gotten to a position where they're starting to handle this now. The thing is still glowing bright as day, but now his eyes are adjusted to it, so he can then jump in and help with the fight. And it doesn't go, you know, that's the thing is, you never want things to go well ever. So both rangers end up getting taken out, and, you know, the main character ends up having to struggle to finish and finally kill this thing. But after it's all over and the 2 rangers have picked themselves up and they're talking about it, they walk over and, you know, I describe how it works and how it's turned on and off and all this other stuff. Even though the audience has never seen this thing before, the main character goes, wow, that is the brightest light stone I have ever seen. And he's like, yeah, I had it specially made about 15 years ago. These things hate it. And so just from that, you get this, oh no, it was new to me. You know, I had never, you know, knew what this was and all this stuff. But then the world goes, yeah, no, this is just, we just have this stuff. It's just a part of things. So Latimus, you know, the main character has obviously seen a light stone before, just never one that bright. And then, you know, then that gives the Rangers time to go, it's like, know your enemies. And there's these, you know, little things that they're saying and stuff like that. Because he even says, he's like, know your enemies. You got to be prepared for everything. And the main character's like, how do I prepare for stuff that I didn't even know this was existing? That's where that next
Yeah.
conversation flows into. It's like, how do we not even know about this stuff?
Yeah.
So again, it's setting up the world is comfortable with this. The world, and I talk about this all the time in classes. This is another thing that a lot of new writers mess up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. There's a thing that I want to talk about people finding artifacts. So I have my main character find an artifact in the second book, but he can only find the artifact due to a certain set of very unique circumstances. But the amount of times that I have read an author, people stumble on the secluded grove in the forest and find this item that has been lying there for 2,000 years. And I'm like, in 2,000 years, you haven't even had a bear stumble on this thing and bury it. Seriously? Seriously? This is the level of your fate control. Because I'm telling you, if that is the level of your fate control, you're not actually telling me a story. You're giving me a predetermined spiel and nothing here matters.
Yep. That's why this leads into the reason why I do not write prophecies ever. Like nothing that I do is ever prophesized about, because first of all, I'm a big believer in freedom of choice and freedom of that the world is way more chaotic than we give it credit for. My wife is literally the perfect person for me. I don't think there's another human being on this planet that would be a better spouse for me. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other women out there that I could have been happy with. It also doesn't mean that there was some predetermined thing that made sure that me and her got together.
There's this amazing song by Steve Minchin, which he sings to his wife. He's an Australian comedian.
Mm-hmm.
And he sings to his wife, he says, "If I couldn't have you, somebody else would probably do."
So yeah, and so as a writer, I always shy away from anything like that. I'm not a fan because you're right. What it does in my mind, to me as a fan and as a reader, it means that, oh, this was all going to happen. So why am I reading about it? It's sort of like, why make the 3 Star Wars prequels when we already know where it's going to end up? Like, that's a really weird thing to me to do. Now saying that, the Genesis saga is still one of my most popular, sagas out there. And I do have a 3-novel prequel that I have plotted out. The difference is that it takes place 1,500 years before the Genesis saga. And even though there are things in the Genesis saga that are pulled from that, and that's why I wanted to plot it out, because the religious book is a misinterpretation a lot of what happened 1,500 years ago. And so there's all these, there's paintings and all this stuff that shows up that is sort of what happened 1,500 years ago, but not exactly what happened, because it's been 1,500 years. I needed to figure out what actually happened so that I could then drop it in with this misleading kind of way that they've interpreted those events. So maybe one day I go back and write those, but there's so much that you don't know.
I love subverting tropes. I have a penchant for it. I had one of my ARC readers ask me why I don't have a female character in the first book. I have female character. Why I don't have a strong female character present a lot in the first book. And I had to explain that because I wanted to subvert the trope of the daughter with a stern father. And I wanted to flip that and have my main character have a cold authority figure who is female. But in order to flip the trope, I had to make him male. But with the prophecy thing specifically, I like subverting the trope there in that I have a prophecy. But half of it hasn't happened and will never happen. Because things go wrong. You can predict anything you want to predict, and it has a probability of happening. But it's not a guarantee.
but to me, that's not really a prophecy. That's more of an educated guess.
It is an educated guess. It is,
and everybody can do that. So I'm talking about the hardcore.
Yeah.
This is literally some crazy sage 1,000 years ago wrote this story, and this is what's gonna. And then it happens. And you can do. I mean, I think Jordan did a pretty good job with it. because it was prophesized and all this stuff. And I think he did a pretty good job of, like, if you're going to do it, that's a great example of one of the best ways to do it, because of the fact that again, it came down to misinterpretation. So we even got some of the prophecies, and I really loved, like, one of the things he did that I really loved was, like, the one woman who had the big prophecy about the dragon being reborn literally died the second she said it. And so you can't have any follow-up questions to, like, wait, no, she's just like, the dragon's been reborn. I really kind of, when I read that, I was like, oh, I see what you did there. That's pretty good. I like that you killed her off. Like, there's no follow-up questions. There's no more comment. You're just dead. So, but I think he did an admirable job. And I still, and so I'm not poo-pooing on using prophecies. I'm just saying the reason why I don't go as a story creator myself, why I don't like to use them, is because I like things to be. It's one of the reasons why first of all, it's one of the reasons why I love ensemble casts, because I like to kill main characters. I like to kill narrating characters, people that I make you fall in love with, that you're like, oh, this is a narrating character and it's a main character, so I can fall in love with it and I'm fine because it's going to be all the way to the end. Wait, it's dead? Like, no, you can't. Like, I love that. Like, why did you kill that character? And the funny thing is even though I've got the reputation of an author who kills main characters, I've only killed a handful, and usually only one in a project. And the only reason why I do it is because, I always want to make sure that the audience is always scared that someone else would, like, if I chop off this guy's head, you have no idea, no one's safe. And so that when you get in those deaths,
it's like with Martin. Man, that first book, it smelled of prophecy. It was like the dire wolves being set up with the Stark children, Ned Stark being set up as like the driving force. Then in the middle, your trigger should be going off when he kills the first dire wolf, and you're like, oh boy. And then at the end, where he chops off Ned's head, and it's like, huh. You never think anybody's safe again. Of course, no. Martin really does kill his character.
He does kill everybody. And so that's where it goes to the other extreme.
Yeah.
Where I actually think that's a huge weakening part of that story. I think the way I kill off characters strengthens the story, and I think the way he does it weakens the story. And for two reasons. One, I'm very strategic. Like, I know before I start writing who I'm introducing that isn't going to make it. And so I know that I'm going to connect you at a very, so like in the Genesis saga, I kill off this guy, and to me, it's very obvious that he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's literally just the mentor character, but I don't introduce him as an Obi-Wan Kenobi mentor character. I introduce him as a main hero. And so you get behind him and you follow him. And then when he dies, it's this huge impact. I mean, one of my favorite fan emails that I ever got on it was this woman. The title of the email said, "You owe me a personal apology." And then in the email, she said, I got to this point where you killed this character, and I was so angry that I stood up, I screamed no, and I flung the book across the room. And then I realized I was at Starbucks. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like you fell so deep into the story, you forgot you were in public and you made a fool of yourself. So like, that's exactly what I want to accomplish as a writer. With the death, it does a couple things. First of all, it accomplishes what I wanted to accomplish as far as making you never feel safe with any of your characters that you love, even though none of them die after that. Like, that's it. But you still are always in every scene, even 2 books later, you're like, oh, this is it. This I love this character. I can't believe he's going to do this. I'm so angry. Oh, thank goodness. Oh. See, and that's what I want. I want that terror, that feeling, because that makes you enjoy the story more. So that's one.
Yeah.
But 2, the death has purpose. It grows the story. It grows the other characters.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Martin misses. So like with Ned, when he kills Ned, it is, yes, it does the first thing where it's like, oh, he's going to, I might lose characters, because Ned is the only character in the entire story that's good. Like, from start to finish, or not the only character that's good. That's the wrong way to say it. Ned is the strongest, best character of that series. Everyone else, even though some of them are fantastic, none of them are quite as good as Ned was. Ned is absolutely the best character in that story. So you do get that. You do get the, oh, but then as you kill more and more and more, and everyone, it's like The Walking Dead. Literally everyone dies. And now it's like, well, I don't care anymore. I don't care about any of these characters. And so that you lose the power of that. But the second thing that really bothers me about it is it's worthless. It does nothing. And every time I say that, some Game of Thrones fan will always want to rebuttal it. And they're like, oh, no, it shows how crazy King Joffrey was. Really? Like, he had already murdered children and like all sort. He was insane. Killing Ned did nothing. And then they're like, oh, but it made.
I'll tell you what it did. I'll tell you what.
Okay, and I'll tell you why you're wrong. But go ahead. Tell me what you think.
No. I'm not saying it added to the story. I'll tell you what it did. It allowed Martin to keep the secret of Jon's parentage. Because if Ned had gone to the wall, he would have seen Jon. And he had promised Jon that the next time they meet, he will tell him about his mother. So if he had not killed Ned, Ned was sentenced to the wall. He would have gone to join the guard. He would have been with Jon, at which point,
does that hurt the story, though?
Promise, he would have revealed it, right?
Does that hurt the story?
I don't know. I don't know if it would have hurt the story to have Jon know earlier, but it might have. Because Jon didn't think of himself as a Targaryen. Therefore, when everything started falling apart down in the main kingdom, his temptation to go down there and fix things was only to help his supposed brother, Robb. Whereas if he was a Targaryen, it might have changed.
Well, so let me ask a question, because I don't remember. When was it revealed?
It is not revealed in the books yet.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because I haven't seen the show.
Okay.
I've only read the books.
Yeah.
So here, and I never finished book 5 because I couldn't. I've started that book. I've started that book 4 or 5 times now.
I'm sorry if I spoiled it for you.
No, I don't care. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm done with Game of Thrones. I have no interest in any of it. Yeah. So here's a couple things. And the reason why I want to say that, first of all, everything that happened after book 5, or really after book 4 in the TV show, Martin isn't going to write that. He's adamantly said, I disagree with everything they did. I'm not using any of that. So you're assuming that that's what, like, I don't know if Martin actually was.
Maybe.
Ned might not even, or Jon might not have even been a Targaryen as far as Martin is concerned. So that's where I'm going to say no. I disagree, because I don't think that Martin might have even been doing that, because he's already come out publicly and said everything they've done has just pissed me off, and like I would never have done any of this stuff and all this stuff. I also don't think he's ever going to finish it, because you have that now, and I just don't think that he's gonna. I think it's a fiasco wrapped inside of a warm stink burger wrapped inside of something else that's bad. And I think the story is now, this is what you get. You get part of it in novels and part of it in the TV show, and that's it. It's done. It's and that's why I'm like, well, I have no interest. I'm not going to read this. I'm not going to watch this. I'm out. I'm done. I'm finished. But here's the thing. So I'm going to disagree that, because from the novel standpoint, we will never know whether that was actually the case or not, because that might have been the right moment for him to learn it, because there's a lot of things that can deter Ned from getting up to the wall and all sorts of things. He could have also been, released by Robb and all sorts of, he could have gone in all sorts of different ways if he hadn't been beheaded. So that's that. And that's new. No one has ever hit me with that, but they have hit me with the, it showed that King Joffrey was crazy, but you already knew that.
The other thing that was easy to see.
Well, the other thing was, they were like, well, it's what started the war. It's what caused Robb to do what he did. And I'm like, no. Like, your father is imprisoned. That's all you need. Like, that's it. Like, screw you. We're coming down and we're going to kick your butt. That is literally, it was just, so it did nothing for the story. It did. Yeah. And that's the thing. If you're going to kill off a narrating character, it has to have a value. So like Obi-Wan dies in Star Wars. That's the moment that Luke Skywalker goes, oh crap, this is real. Now, why yesterday the death of the two people who raised him from a child did nothing to him is just proof of bad writing. But the next day, the guy he's known for 3 days, he dies and his world is shattered. But it still is, I mean, that's still a growing moment for Luke. I think it's bad writing, and I will pick on Star Wars to the day I die. I am not a fan. It still has value to the story of Obi-Wan, and even the uncle and aunts, even though he didn't even flinch at their deaths.
I mean, there was that moment where he stood there with the 2 sons, and he was all like, "Oh, sad."
But was it that, or was it the fact that, because what they did do was they forced him to run?
Half a minute, right? It wasn't like it wasn't.
But it also,
but I mean,
there
was that little scene where he was like, and then Obi-Wan's like, "Oh no, it's Imperial stormtroopers," and he's like, "Aunt Lou," and so, but I mean, it wasn't a very long grieving process, but.
And then he never thinks about him again for the rest of his life.
No, he doesn't.
They never come up in his mind.
I read a great analysis of Star Wars the other day that said something along the lines of, a lot of problems in this universe would be solved if people would properly grieve.
But anyway, so that's the thing. If you're going to kill off a main character, it's got to have value.
Yeah.
It can absolutely have the shock value, which is what I mean, again, woman threw a book across Starbucks without realizing she was at Starbucks. That's great shock value. But it also it grew a specific character. There was another narrating character that was involved on that scene when it happens. And so, like, it grows that character tremendously, and it really opens his eyes up to the thing. It also gives him his actual story, because so one of the weird things I did with that, so Patrick Labruto, who is an editor for Raymond Feist and just tons of stuff. He was a massive acquisitions editor for several big publishing companies. He was my first official editor. And he really, like, he begrudgingly gave me compliments, because he's like, I don't normally say this, because this is my first book. And he's like, I don't normally give compliments to first-time authors like this, but you did some, like, because like when he first started reading the Arderi story arc, he's like, he doesn't really have a story arc. He's just kind of going on. I'm like, I know, wait for it, it's fine. And so he, Arderi doesn't have a story until, the person he's with dies, and then because his story, because the other character starts, and again, I don't introduce him as a mentor character, I introduce him as a hero, so he's got a story. And his story goes, oh yeah, no, we know where we're going. Oh wait, he's dead. There's like, I just chop his story off, and you're like, what? But that's where our Arderi character now that becomes his quest and his story. And so he grows through that. So it really is one arc with 2 characters. It's just that one starts it and the other finishes it. And he's like, that's brilliant. He's like, I've never seen that done anywhere else. He's like in the beginning, I was like, I'm not really cotton into this character, but then when this event happens and he chooses to do what he does, and he actually does this thing that isn't really, because the first character is trying to save his child, and so it isn't Arderi's child. And he's like, and when he goes through all this hardships to do this for a man that he only knew for a couple of weeks, because he really is the Obi-Wan Kenobi character for this story. And he's like, and that really made me connect to this character at this hugely deep level. And he's like, and I never would have thought it. Because he did. He was like, because again, he's this big editor with this big publishing houses. And he's like, you can't do this. Don't do that. It's wrong. And I'm like, just wait for it. Just go a little deeper. Wait for it. And so then he gets there and he's like, man, psychologically, this really works. It's brilliant. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted you to wait for it. I mean, I can tie it back into our original topic by saying it still comes down to the humanizing elements. That's what storytelling is about. It's not about following the exact tropes that everyone else has used. It's not about following the structure to the T. It's not about, cool magic items or cool world building or cool blowing up Death Stars or cool swords or cool whatever. It's not about making sure that you have the right number of female characters and the right number of male characters and the right number of this and the right number of that. It's about telling a story that resonates with people on a humanizing level. That's where you will separate yourself from everyone else. And if you can do that, if you can evoke those human emotions from people, that's what's going to happen. So bringing it back to magic, it's still the same way. Using magic systems or magic items, however you use them, whether you use them more like me, where it's more, utility type magic, or more fantastical, where we're actually having these special things that do special items, none of that matters. It still only matters about, are you impacting the reader on a human level, because all your readers are human. That's it.
Yeah. And I think that is a great place to end this discussion.
Very organically came to an end. Well, as always, this was fantastic. I love our chats. I really hope other people are enjoying these, because these are, again, they're so that on the one hand, and me and you haven't even talked about this, Marie, but this is one of the things that kind of bothers me about what we're doing from a structure standpoint. I'm like, we really just kind of meander through these things. So on the one hand, I'm like, we really, like, you listen to other podcasts and they're very, structured.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think we get into topics that we never would have gotten into if we didn't just chase these rabbits and just kind of meander through these topics.
So I thought about drawing up agendas, because I do that I do that for interviews. I do define the questions.
Yeah, that's how we met. Was you had me on your show, and what you sent me was really detailed and really awesome.
Yeah, but you like chasing rabbit holes. I like chasing rabbit holes sometimes. and so I think that it works better to be a little bit more like, this is the theme we're talking about, and just
see where it goes. And I guess, I'd like to know, like, so if you are listening to this YouTube podcast, whatever, either send us an email. You can, I'm very Googleable, but it's author at
It's in the descriptions and so on. Yeah.
So yeah, just reach out to us, drop a whatever comments, whatever, let us know. I mean, because obviously we're kind of in this mindset where we just want to talk writing. And so this show is really for us. It's kind of this selfish. When we did that interview, we really hit it off, and we had enough things that were different that it made conversation interesting, but we had enough things that were the same that we really got along and had this really good chemistry between us. Because I mean, like I said this in the first podcast, you're talking about an American writer living in Las Vegas and a Finnish writer living in, I don't remember what city you live in.
Espoo. And you can laugh, it's okay.
I'm not even going to try to say that. So like we just live in this magical world that the two of us can come together. We were put together from somebody in Australia. Like, it's just this weird kind of connection of all the stuff that happened. Like, for me, I love these conversations because they're just fun. Yeah. But we also want to give, it is still a podcast that you listeners are spending your time and effort actually coming here to listen to this stuff. So we do want to, do stuff that you guys are going to want. So if you have topics, if you have things that you want us to discuss, if you have questions, social media, these things, comments, emails, all of this stuff, get us this information, because we're definitely want to do this for you guys.
Yeah. Comment below also if you'd like us to apply more structure to these podcasts. We can give it the good old college try.
If you've enjoyed this episode, you will probably like Marie's YouTube channel, Just in Time Worlds, and Drake's courses on creative writing that he offers through Drake U. So make sure to check those out. If you have any suggestions or comments, please email them to releasingyourinnerdragon@gmail.com, and we will be back next week for another episode.